Imagine being the parent of a sick child with a form of cancer that's very dangerous but very treatable at the same time with the right medicine. Then imagine how you'd feel being told you can't get the medicine because of a sudden shortage.
A critical drug shortage is a medicine some cancer patients rely on to stay alive, but the drug is now in such short supply, patients are actually being turned away.
The Food and Drug Administration says hospitals are running out of many drugs, including popular cancer-fighting medications such as Doxil and other chemotherapy treatments.
The total number of drugs in shortage currently exceeds 275 FDA-approved therapies and continues to grow.
People can't believe in the United States of America that there are Americans who can't get treatment because the drugs are not available. And in a lot of cases, in most cases, these are low-cost, injectable, generic cancer drugs, but are a mainstay part of treatment.
When we walk the halls of Congress, the first thing someone asks us, no matter whose office we're in, is, tell me about the drug shortages. What do you see the problem as? How can we fix this? We're hearing from our constituents that they can't get their drugs. This is a serious problem.
The entire generic industry now has real serious problems because of the way Medicare pays.
My wife is a full-time working oncology nurse, and recently she's come home and said, you know, you spend a lot of time in Washington, D.C., but you haven't fixed this yet. And she's really serious about it because she has patients who basically can't get certain treatments, or their treatments are delayed because of these drug shortages.
Just in the last year, we've had trouble accessing over 20 cancer drugs that are generics that typically those patients and the practice were able to get easily.
Medicare pays by a system called average sales price. And the problems with generic drugs, when they come out, the cheapest drug is always the most popular. And the average sales price for generics is always the best seller, weights the average of this average sales price.
It's just not simply viable for companies to make these drugs and take on some of the overhead and the risk with very little reward.
Medicare and the government has impacted what's happening here, and it's a system that's price controlled. So I like to say price controls never work. They always have unintended consequences. And in this case, it's affecting and impacting Americans with cancer. And it has to be changed right now.
Because Medicare is paying it a very low rate because of this averaging, people all flock to the low price leader and other people can't stay in business. Well, if this low price leader all of a sudden has a manufacturing problem, there's no more entrants in the market, and therefore there's a drug shortage.
The current situation is simply unacceptable, and we must act to address this growing crisis. As most of my colleagues know, I am working on a solution that will continue to improve coordination between manufacturers and the government, but that also address some of the federal price control and rebate structures that prevent the true costs of bringing these important medicines to patients.
We're hoping that there will be some legislation which will be coming out shortly, which will actually tackle the fundamental cause of the drug shortages. And if that happens and the legislation is what we think it's going to be, then we're going to get very much behind, and we're going to ask everybody across this country to get behind this legislation.
I think this is a real tragedy, the fact that we've gotten to the point where drugs that save lives, drugs that have been around for years, sometimes decades, drugs that are often very cheap to produce, if they are to be produced, are no longer in supply. This is, in my mind, unconscionable in the United States of America.